Do you remember that time when you whipped out a piece of paper and poured your heart and soul into that brand new art piece? As you drew, all you could think about was how this was your greatest work, your magnum opus, the peak of your little art career. When you were done with your masterpiece, you immediately stuck it to the fridge. It was beautiful. It was glorious. It was... This is not how I remember it. Man, this is embarrassing. We've all had those moments. The moment when you immediately start cringing at your younger self's inability to draw hands and start questioning whether or not you want to burn this piece of paper. Whether you accept it or not, that art is a part of your history, even if it's a part of your history that you'd like to forget. I've had those moments, and so have you. So, as a testament to my growth, I've decided to redraw 3 of my ancient art pieces and see how my style has changed over the years. So, this first piece, I remember me and my siblings were like pretending to be superheroes, and so I made myself like a book librarian or something. I honestly don't know how I fought crime. Maybe I threw books at bad guys, but yeah, there's just not much I can say about this piece. It's pretty basic. When I saw it again for the first time, my mind immediately went to Dr. Olivia Octavius from Into the Spider-Verse, which I just watched that movie, and I really wish I had watched it sooner. It was absolutely incredible. So I really wanted to take inspiration off of her tentacles for the robot arms on this superhero. The main process was pretty simple. It was just a sketchy first layer and then some line art. But I was in love with the pose and was so excited to color. I remember a lot of backstory for this OC. As I've already said, it's mainly just a librarian of sorts. I showed it to one of my family members and they were like, man, she must be really good at restocking the library shelves, and it made me laugh. So in the daytime, she's reaching all those high shelves for you. At night, she's fighting crime and tracking down people with overdue book fines or something like that. I don't know. I had so much fun with her goggles. I ended up coloring them straight yellow, added some highlights, and then faded the opacity. I think it turned out really cool, especially when I added some highlights at the very end to make them look like they're glowing. Besides that, I was trying to decide if I was going to do cell shading or smooth shading. I eventually went with smooth shading because it takes a lot to make cell shading look good, and I just gave up and was like, you know what, we're just going to do smooth shading. It looks better. Quite sure when I will try to do drawing and talking at the same time. It is not a skill that I am used to or have practiced, so I don't know how entertaining I can be when I'm in the zone. My grammar will probably be so much more broken than it is now in editing mode, but I still like to try. I think it'd make things a little bit more engaging so I don't have to think about jokes to add in when I'm editing, and I can just live in the moment and be funny live. I have no idea. But I feel like it would just really distract me if I am forced to come up with things to talk about. I'm not the person that can just draw and talk. I end up forgetting that I'm supposed to talk, so we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Maybe in the next video. I wasn't sure what I was doing with the jeans. I kind of was like trying to blur sideways to give it a grainy texture. I don't think it worked out exactly how I was picturing it, but because when you zoom out you can't see any of that detail, it doesn't really matter. I also tried to give all of her like belts a leather texture. I kind of like how it turned out. Again, it's too far away for people to actually see it, but in my heart I know that I did put that detail in, and now you do too. In the original photo, she did not have very detailed shoes. They were like just brown blocks, I was not good at feet or hands as a younger kid. All of my poor characters, their hands were behind their backs or they were holding something. Like if I could avoid drawing hands, I would. And if I could avoid drawing shoes, I would also do that. So all of my characters had the most basic shoes. So I had a lot of fun redesigning the librarian's shoes. They honestly look like bowling shoes now that I'm looking at it. I'm not sure how to feel about that, but it's something. Maybe she goes bowling on Friday nights. Eventually I started to give it a slight background, and as I was doing the weird tan dust things, I realized if she was like walking around in dust particles, like maybe a wall just exploded and she's walking through, then wouldn't the dust be on the ground and not on the ceiling? And so I flipped the entire background upside down so that could just be dust. And then I added some glowy highlights to really make it look like her suit was very technical. And I was done. I'm honestly quite pleased with this. I think it's a definite improvement from the original. Again, in love with the pose. I absolutely adore it. I remember this person very clearly. When I saw her in church, she was wearing a green dress, and I loved the style of it, so I ended up drawing it and never coloring it when I got home. But when I saw it in my sketchbook, I immediately remembered that it was a green dress, and I decided, you know what, we're gonna finally color it and make it green. So again, I started with finding a good reference and began sketching out the stuff. Usually my first line art layer, or I guess it's a sketch layer, is really rough. Honestly, I'm more of a discovery artist where the first sketch layer is supposed to be a suggestion, and I end up completely changing things with the second line art layer. So if you ever see one of my sketch layers in a thumbnail and are like, that is such an ugly piece of art, just wait. It gets better, hopefully. It's more just that my sketch layers are always really ugly. It's the process. It's the process that makes it beautiful. I love short little dresses like these that you can like spin around and they kind of like swish around your legs. Honestly, I rate dresses by the ability I can spin in them, which is kind of funny, but at the same time, I will not pass up on a good spinny dress. I did eventually decide to give this person heels, even though in the original image she was wearing flats. I didn't really know how to change up the style from the reference photo I was using to give her flats, and so it was just, I was running out of time, and I knew I wanted to get this done before I had to go to bed, so I was like, you know what, she just gets heels. She maybe got older in those 3 years that I drew her last, and so now she wears some fancy smancy heels. I have no idea what material her dress is made of, but I love the shading. I tried giving her polka dots manually, but I ended up not liking that look, so I decided to erase all of the polka dots and find the polka dot brush, because I always do the smartest option first. After readjusting the sizes, I ended up taking a purple color and shading over the dots because they looked very flat at first. I also lowered the opacity of the dots as well. It turned out good. I kind of wish that I could have warped the dots a little bit to look like it was moving with the fabric, but for the time I had and all of the experiments I ended up doing, I really love how the dress turned out. I think skin was fairly simple. Again, it was me deciding whether or not to cell shade or smooth shade. Eventually, I did go with smooth shade, but I wanted to make sure that I had all of the cell shading plot points out before I started smooth shading. Is it just me, or is it really hard to say cell shading? I have tripped over that tongue twister multiple times already. It makes me not want to say cell shading because I almost start calling it shell shading. After adding some more shadows, I moved on to the hair, which short hair is always a difficulty for me because, especially curly hair, because it's really hard for me to picture where the light is bouncing off the curls. Straight hair is a little bit easier because I can just be like, oh, the sun, it is hitting this side of the face and it's straight hair, so the reflections are going to be in one place. No, with curls, there's like a million different reflections, and honestly, I need to just spend a day learning how reflections on curls work, because I'm honestly probably making it up as I go. But all that to say, I really like how her hair turned out after a lot of struggle. I gave her a little bit more makeup and tried experimenting with her eyeshadow, and I ended up thinning the line art of her eyes to make them stand out a little bit more. Eventually, yes, I made her shoes a really dark emerald green, and I honestly really like kind of how pudgy her shoes are. I think that it gives it a nice like cartoonish look. The bag, I was getting pretty tired by the time I got to the bags. I was like, beige, we're going beige, and we're gonna minimal shading and smudge it all up. It's not that important. Yeah, the bag could have been better, but I was just tired by the time I was done. It was like almost time for bed by the time I finished. Eventually I decided to give her like geometric shapes as a background, because I don't do backgrounds very much, but because I'm starting this YouTube channel, I really want to start doing that more to tie together my pieces, because now other people are gonna see them and backgrounds just look cool. This is personally my favorite piece out of all of the remakes. It's beautiful and it's colorful, and it just makes me so happy every time I see it. Out of all the pieces, this last one probably has the most backstory out of all of them, and so I will explain the lore of this, well, I guess half alien scuba diver archaeologist who explores the ruins of a forgotten ocean. Yeah, very simple, all the things. Honestly, when I first designed her, I was creating her for my cousin's made-up world, and there was an ocean that had ruins, and my cousin asked me, I don't know what these ruins are or where they came from, and I just need some ideas. And so little me sat down and decided that I really wanted to draw a scuba diver, and as I drew her, her hair turned out really weird. It was like giant tubey strands of pink, and that's when I decided that she was related to a almost extinct alien species that lived in the ruins, and that was her motivation to explore them, because she was related to them. I can't remember if there was any more story. I just knew that she was going to find one of the sort of extinct species and like learn more about her past, but that was pretty much it. This piece was interesting because I started with the background. I really love underwater pictures. I've done quite a few in my time as an artist, and I was just really excited to just recreate it, and so I decided I'm holding off on the actual human until I can see where the colors are going to matter most. So after doing some line art, I ended up jumping straight into the colors. I had to be careful to make them vibrant enough to stick out against the blues, because a lot of her wetsuit was blue. As you can see, the line art is even blue. So it was just a lot of making sure that there was enough shadows and highlights to make her stand out against the turquoise and aquamarine background, sandy rocks, and all the things. I eventually changed her flippers to brown, because in the picture, her flippers are like bright blue, and I was doing that background, and I was like, no. These flippers are gonna blend straight into the ocean floor. And so I took the only other color that I had available, which was the brown from her belt, and just tied it into flippers. I don't think I've ever seen a pair of brown, especially light brown scuba flippers, so I might have to do some research and actually see if there's such a thing as light brown scuba flippers, because, yeah, it was a last minute decision. I think her oxygen tank kind of turned out wonky. It just doesn't look realistic, but I kind of wanted to jump into the hair, because as I said, her hair is what immediately made me come up with her backstory, because it was so weird looking. So I ended up giving it like sparkles and tried to give it lots of like gelatinish looking highlights. And in the end, I really like how her wild hair interacts with the ocean water. I actually would love to do more drawings of her to experiment with how her different features would react to different like underwater situations. I also want to try drawing the alien that I designed as her relative, but that's another project for another time. I really loved doing these bubbles. They were so fun. Honestly, I got to be so messy, and I eventually smudged it, and honestly, it's probably my favorite part of the piece. I tried adding fish, but I cut the part out because eventually the fish didn't make it. I was trying to hurry while doing on this piece. I was actually talking on the phone with the same person that I created the old original piece for, my cousin, and that was really funny because we were talking about the lore of this character and all the things. It was just a really funny conversation as I worked on this. It's probably not my favorite, but I honestly love the freedom and the floaty look that the bubbles and the bright colors give off of. If I had had more time, I would have messed around with spacing to make it look more immersive, but for now it's okay.
We've all had a talent that we pour our heart into. So we all had a time when we couldn't hit that softball, or paint a straight line, or make cupcakes that didn't taste like cardboard. All that matters is that we stuck to it and put in the work to grow. And even though it can still be janky, messy, and unproportionate, my art still is unproportionate, I'm a cartoonist, I still consider it fridge-worthy.